I still think of the 12C as the new McLaren, but of course it's nearly 3 years old now. In car terms, that means time for a facelift, and in this case, a new name, 650S. The 12C had a tough time at launch, teething problems and something called a 458 to compete with. Mostly it lost out, but I think too many people forgot that this was McLaren's first attempt at a volume road car, and I for one loved it. The 650S is a reply to both customer and media feedback. It's faster and more aerodynamic. McLaren claims 0 to 125 miles an hour in 8.4 seconds. That's ballistic. It also has a new chassis setup that should be more accurate and more fun. Before we drive it and find out if the claims are true, let's have a man from McLaren tell us what's changed underneath.
Now, there's a perception that the 650S is just a bit of a facelift over the 12C, but that's not quite the case. So I'm here with Jamie Kastorfin, who is head of product at McLaren, used to work under me at Autocar magazine, became a bit important, don't know how that happened. He's going to talk me through the key differences between this and the 12C. You can probably spot that I can't talk properly because I'm a bit lurgified. Jamie, come on then, talk me through. First of all, suspension. Where do we start?
So good to see you, Chris. So we've got the rolling chassis here, which is a really great tool to talk through and demonstrate some of the technical capabilities of the car that sit underneath the bodywork. So 650S has got a real step up in terms of the downforce. So it's around 40% more downforce than 12C. So to cope with that and take advantage of that, we've made some really detailed changes to the suspension system. So like 12C, 650S uses our proactive chassis control system, but this is the next evolution of that with some detailed changes to the hardware and the software. So, for example, we've moved what we call the accumulators from lower down in the car to up closer to the dampers themselves, which gives us better control and compromise between ride and handling. We've made changes to the dampers themselves in terms of the valves and, of course, the software to really work with that increased downforce and a change in the spring rate. So the springs on 650S are 22% stiffer at the front and 37% stiffer at the rear. If we then talk a little bit about the wheels, tyres, brakes, so because there's three major changes that are going on right here in the wheel. So first of all, we've got a new lightweight forged alloy wheel, which is unique to 650S, right. And really helps contribute to some weight saving over 12C. Around the wheel, we've got a new spec of Pirelli P0 Corsa tyre that's developed specifically for the 650S.
And the standard P0 is the same, or is it another new tyre?
It's the same as the 12C. Actually, the Winter is also a new tyre as well.
Okay.
But yeah, so really designed for the 650S. It's an asymmetric pattern, and particularly at the front, it's really designed to give a little more bite, better turn-in.
Are you saying the 12C understeered?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that this is designed to work with the increased downforce that 650S.
But it's all about giving this slightly sharper front end to the car, yeah?
Exactly.
And you said earlier that actually the way that, it's the same width of tyre, but the way that the tyre actually sits on the rim...
It just gives you a slightly wider footprint. Exactly. So, and then inside the tyre, we've got the latest generation of our carbon ceramic brake system, which is a standard fit on 650S. And the real change there is we've been working extremely hard on the pedal modulation because, as you know, that's incredibly important for driver connection.
Yeah. And this is ceramics are standard on this car?
Ceramics are standard, exactly.
If someone came to you and said, I want steel brakes?
We can do that.
You can do that?
Yep.
That's interesting.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
So the actual hardware is very similar to 12C, is it?
Yeah, so it's just an evolution.
So you've moved the accumulator up here,
yeah.
But things like all the major components, the uprights, all of the arms, all of this stuff here is pretty much the same. You said there was a top mount change.
Yeah, so we changed the top mount because while we want 650S to have a different driving dynamic and it's got an increased performance, we also wanted to improve on refinement, so we've changed the top mount, which just gives us a little better isolation in terms of noise, vibration and harshness over, for example, cat's eyes or bumps in the road.
Let us step to the rear of the vehicle.
Okay.
Right, so, donkey. Same swept capacity?
Yes.
But more power. How do you get more power?
So 650 PS, 641 brake horsepower, step up in power and also in torque, so 678 Newton meters or 500 foot-pound. And that comes through both hardware and software changes. So hardware, so we've got revised new cylinder heads, new pistons, revised timing, new exhaust valves and a new exhaust system which helps take some weight out of the car.
And the sports exhaust is Inconel, is it?
It is, yeah, exactly, yeah.
And in terms of heads, can we say they're P1 heads, or can we say they're heads that have been improved in light of what you learned from P1?
Yeah, the latter. So it's really, I mean, you know, it's the McLaren ethos is all about continuing improvement. We learned a huge amount through the P1 program, and we were able to put that into the development of this car.
Has there been an accumulator change back here, or have they always been there?
No, this has also moved as well.
So we've got quite a bit more power,
Yep.
but we've actually, it's the torque
It's the
improvement
torque,
and the way the torque is dispersed over the rev range. That's probably the big news, isn't it?
Exactly. So you've got more torque low down, but also peaks at, builds to a peak at 6,000 RPM, and that gives a different feel to the car. And it's the increase in torque that you particularly feel on the road, driving it on the road up here today. I guess you felt that. So.
No, I was driving about 8 miles an hour because I'm feeling so ill. I'd love to be involved in the meeting, or be a fly on the wall in the meeting, when a bunch of, and I know you're an intelligent human being, and a bunch of intelligent human beings sit down in light of what the 12C is and says, we need to make a car that's faster than that. Because the last time I drove a 12C on the road, my abiding impression was, good God, this is fast. And you've made a faster car.
Yeah.
I mean, where does it all end?
Well, you know, I mean, it's within the McLaren ethos and our brand positioning to be class leading in terms of performance, and we're just very aware of our competitors coming up, and we just want to make sure that we're at the forefront of that performance table, really.
There's also some gearbox changes, aren't there, in terms of the calibration, but also more than that, isn't there? Isn't there more going on, or was it just a calibration change? Because it seems faster to me.
Yeah, so it's a calibration change, and we use a number of new pieces of technology in different modes. So we use something called inertia push when you're really going for the maximum performance, and we recognise that through which mode you're in, your pedal position, where you are in the rev range. And we also use something called cylinder cut elsewhere in the range, which just gives it a different sounding gear shift. And we're blending those two new technologies to deliver a more emotional shift, but also a faster shift.
Can we have one without the bodywork like this, like a beach buggy one?
That would be an engineering challenge, but I mean, it definitely demonstrates the benefit of the carbon fibre tub construction.
I knew he'd get that in there. That's enough tech. I need to have a drink of water because my throat's about to fall
Okay,
off.
good to see you, Chris. Good to see you.
Cheers, mate.
Like the 12C, this car comes as a coupe and a spider. This is a spider, but it's raining, so I'm leaving the roof on.
I don't know, you come all the way to Spain for good weather and sunshine, and you get here and it's lashing with rain, it's bloody cold. Still, we've got a new McLaren to drive, so we shouldn't be complaining, should we, children? This is the 650S, the response to the fact the MP4 12C was a rather odd-sounding name, hence the reason it became the 12C in later years. Does this car replace the 12C? Well, I suppose it does. McLaren says it'll build both alongside each other, but I think we can assume that the 12C is kind of gone, which is a shame because I rather like that car. Now then, what have we got here then? We've got 650 horsepower, and we've got it through much more than just a calibration change as well. We've got it through new pistons, new all sorts of everything, new heads, different calibration on the engine, we've got a different calibration on the gearbox. That's 500 foot-pounds of torque, by the way, in my muddled way. You might be able to understand now that I'm not feeling the best at the moment. I'm a little bit under the weather. Anyhow, what's it like to drive? Well, here we go, let's have a go. Sounds good, doesn't it? Well, I'll tell you what, it is immensely fast to start with. I don't remember thinking the 12C needed to be any quicker, but crikey. These cars, these sort of super sports car, class cars, have got so fast now. There's quite a bit of difference in the chassis as well. We've got 22% more spring rate at the front, 37% at the rear, but through some damper changes, McLaren claims that the car's actually just as comfortable on the road. And in fact, they've changed the front top mount to try and make it a bit better when you hit things like speed bumps in town. So all in all, it's supposed to be sharper and quieter and more comfortable. There's also a much bigger difference now between normal and sport mode. Normal is quite lazy and feels on the circuit here, certainly does feel a bit too soft. But the moment you go into sport, the thing is really transformed. There's a lot less roll, car feels more agile, and you also notice a real difference in the powertrain. Engine feels more responsive to the throttle pedal, and the gear shift's that much punchier. Track mode, well, yeah. He says backing it in. Track mode, well, that's another whole step again. If we tweak the two little familiar buttons down here now you've got a weapon, you really have. It's quite something. And it just wants to sit with lovely balance of oversteer in these slightly damp conditions. I've left the systems on so you can actually just lean on it. It's really, really clever electronics that allow the less expert driver to feel the thing move around in quite some safety, I have to say. Still an open diff at the back, so not quite as perhaps predictable as a Ferrari 458 or as enjoyable to drift, but then, you know, who buys these cars because they drift? I'm not sure I should be saying that. Does it feel profoundly different to a 12C? Look, if you work for McLaren, you drive these things day in, day out, I'm sure this feels like a whole new world, because incrementally it is better. To me, it does feel obviously very similar to a 12C. It just feels a little bit better, a little bit faster, a bit more responsive. The thing is, the 12C was already mighty fast. This thing's just taken it to a slightly faster level. I know that sounds awfully simplistic, but I'm struggling to see how you can actually use a car that's much faster than this. Interestingly, after the P1 experience, this feels so turbo laggy. That P1's just completely spoilt my expectations of what a twin turbocharged engine can feel like. Trying to do some drifty shots earlier in the wet, the car didn't want to hook up at the front axle as you'd expect in the damp. I hoofed the power in, waited for ages for the turbos to spool up. When they did come, there I was facing backwards. In these slightly damper conditions, rather than fully wet, the car is much more predictable. But even so, the torque fill thing that the P1 does is very, very clever. What do you think to the way it looks from the outside? Well, I don't really have to pass judgment on that, that's up to you. I think it's a little bit fussy myself, but then I was always a big 12C fan. I seem to have been alone in that. I think most people think this is a real step forward and it's got an edge to it that wasn't there before, so yeah, all in all, goes better, feels even faster if that was possible, and to most people's eyes, looks better. Oh, and it's more comfortable. So, all in all, you'd have to say they've probably done the job.
Now I have to say that at this stage all I wanted to do was curl up and sweat. I was more than a bit broken. I couldn't talk anymore, which many of you will find very pleasing, so I'm now switching to voiceover. In the damp, as you can see, the 650S is much more easily flung about than the 12C. It still isn't 458 controllable, but for a heavily turboed, mid-engined beastie with an open diff, it's damn impressive. You can feel the P1 DNA in these new settings, and that's a real compliment. My only real gripe was when the track was wet, very wet. I had so much understeer, the car was very hard to drive. I tried both the standard and the Corsa Pirellis, and when I tried to slide it, I just kept spinning. Does that really matter to people who buy these things? Not a bit. Just leave the systems on and enjoy the ride. And it is one hell of a ride. Faster than an original McLaren F1, crammed full of dizzying tech, and more fun to drive than the old 12C. It just remains to be seen if the new nose ages well or badly, but that's not for me to decide.